I call to order the Gladstone City Council work session for November 28, 2017. It's 6:30 p.m. Tonight, we're beginning with one regular agenda item, which is the second reading of Ordinance 1483, which is the adoption of the Transportation System Plan. Then we're going to adjourn into a standard work session to discuss proposed amendments to the City Council rules, reviewing the roles and responsibilities of city boards, commissions, and committees, looking at the communication plan for the city, specifically related to the public outreach surrounding our new library, and civic building updates. Tammy, could you please call the roll?
Councilor Milch.
Here.
Councilor Neese.
Present.
Councilor Tracy.
Present.
Councilor Reisner.
Here.
Councilor McMahon.
Here.
Councilor Mercero.
Here.
Mayor Stemple.
Here. Could everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So I just want to remind everybody that this is a work session. It's not one of our standard city council meetings. So the intent is for this to be an open discussion and information gathering, sharing between staff, council, and the people that these topics affect. So in short, the regular process doesn't apply. We're not going to have the 3 minutes where business from the audience. It's going to be more informal, more of an open dialogue related to the topics that we're discussing. If you have issues you would like addressed that are other than what we're talking about tonight, please feel free to either submit the information in writing or plan to speak at the next City Council meeting, which is scheduled for, I believe, December 12th. In order to keep this meeting on track, I'd appreciate everybody trying to stay focused on these topics and minimize the interruptions. And that's it. And also, if we could make sure that we have our phones on off or on silence so that we don't have that interruption as well, that would be great. And that's because I usually have mine ringing during the meetings. So that's it. Jackie, could you please begin with the second reading of Ordinance 1483?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, City Council. Tonight is a formality to have the second reading of our Transportation System Plan ordinance. And we have a script that I'm going to have Jim read, and if one of you wants to accept that motion, that's probably easier to do the language that way.
And this was the motion that was made the last time. That's why we were going to read it, so it's the same. So there was one of you, Councilor McMahon, made a motion to approve Ordinance 1483, an ordinance amending the Gladstone Comprehensive Plan to include the updated Transportation System Plan and to amend the Gladstone Municipal Code to implement the TSP. There was also a motion to amend the motion to include working with staff to correct and modify various aspects of the final plan, which we had talked about that evening. So that was the motion. And it was voted 6-1 last time.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the motion that Mr. Wynot just read.
I'll second that.
Motion was made by Councilor Neese and seconded by Councilor McMahon. Any further discussion? And since this is a second reading, do we need to take a roll call vote?
Yes, please.
Yes. Tammy, could you please take a roll call vote?
Councilor Milch.
Yes.
Councilor Neese.
Yes.
Councilor Tracy.
Yes.
Councilor Reisner.
No.
Councilor McMahon.
Yes.
Councilor Mercero.
Yes.
Mayor Stemple.
Yes. Motion's passed. All right, so now I need somebody to make a motion to adjourn our regular meeting.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn our regular meeting.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Councilor Neese and seconded by Councilor Tracy. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Regular meeting adjourned at 6:35 p.m. So now we're going to start with our work session. First item is round 2, proposed amendments to the City Council rules.
And our apologies for the agenda that was posted. We had an error in the language on that, so I think tonight you have a corrected agenda that shows proposed amendments to the city council rules.
Yeah.
And then the next item is the roles and responsibilities of boards, commissions, and committees. And we're actually excited about this because we are on track for trying to get these complete by the end of the year. But as you can see, we also sent you the wrong information for your packet, and so we've printed out the correct information. Thank you, Councilor Melch, for sending that to us. So that information that is on the dais is the most recent information in regards to the April 25th City Council work session that was held. We had a lot of changes since we first discussed these. We had a subcommittee that was created this past year. So we had a former city administrator, and we've had 2 city councilors change over on the council since that time. So what we did for you this evening is we're bringing it back for further discussion, and also because now we have a new Councilor Milch and a new Councilor Tracy, to talk about whether or not you want to accept these amendments that were talked about, or if there's any further discussion you would like to have. And I would just probably like you to go through page by page and start that process.
Is that what you all would like to do, is go through it page by page? Or since we have so many new people, and because this is brand new, well, not brand new, but revised, and we haven't had time to really look through it, you want to postpone it?
This didn't change much from the...
Well,
here,
and
did it?
I think maybe Councilor Milch, if you could help with the discussion. I wasn't involved with this subcommittee, but I know you were, and I know Councilor Reisner was, and Mayor Stemple. So what we presented tonight as Exhibit A, these are the most recent proposed changes. Is that correct?
Correct. Before I was on the council, Malachi and I served as citizen members of a subcommittee that worked on this along with Mayor Stemple and Councilor Reisner, and the Eric Swanson, the city administrator at that time.
And we had
you were
Chad,
there?
the attorney.
Okay, Chad, the attorney, came. Tammy was there to take notes, and that's what you see. The red lines here are the markups of changes that subcommittee proposed, and we had about, I think, maybe 3 or 4 meetings over the course of several weeks, and so each week, whatever we got to that week would get marked up, and then the next week we would start out with a marked up session. We would change a few more things and mark that up, and that's why there were several documents in existence that had partial markups, and one of them was sent to us by mistake. That was an early version, but I think everything. And then on April 24th or 25th, let me see, would have been the 24th, we discussed it at a city council meeting, and I was brought up to the table as one of the citizen subcommittee members to discuss it with the council. We had some comments, things that council members liked or didn't like about it. I don't think we made any actual changes to the language or recorded any of them for posterity, although I do recall one matter at the end regarding council expenses. The language was a little bit ambiguous, and the city attorney, David, was there that night. He recommended a change that would clarify that. I don't recall if there were other things in here that... the other thing that we discussed that night, I think, was there was a proposed change from using Robert's Rules of Order to using Sturgis,
Yeah.
and I think a majority of the council was not in favor of making that change at that time.
Right.
Correct.
Those are the only things that I recall off the top of my head that the council expressed, or that I remember them wanting to have changed. There may have been other things that a majority of the councilors didn't agree with, but as City Administrator Betts has explained, the council has changed now, so we kind of have to...
So this doesn't necessarily reflect the changes that the city council had discussed at that one meeting.
That's my understanding. I believe this only goes up to the things
final.
that the committee
Okay.
recommended. So
Right.
this is probably the same document that was discussed by the council in April.
Yes. Okay.
That's
And it
correct.
is.
So, in the minutes where the suggested changes were made by former counselors has not happened here.
Okay.
So what Counselor Milch is saying is that for the exception of Counselor Tracy, all of you have seen these proposed changes. It's just been a period of time since we've gone through that.
Okay. So basically, we're starting fresh from the final document proposed by the committee instead of integrating
Correct.
the recommended changes by the council.
That's correct. And in talking with the city attorney today, these proposed changes that were brought forth, he had no concerns. Like he said, the Roberts Rules of Order, he remembered that a majority of you were fine just keeping it the way it was.
And even though I wasn't on the council at that time, I'll just say that, that I think since more people tend to be familiar with that, I would be in favor of keeping Robert's rules, as well.
Okay.
New staff has not made any changes since this clean copy has
Is-
been presented. Correct.
Is there benefit to that other set of meeting minutes? Are they going to provide a large value, moderate value, no value?
They're here in the back, and that was the majority of the council meeting minutes?
Correct. I
Yeah.
thought, did I mishear you, though? I thought that you said, City Administrator Betts, that the council meeting minutes for the April 24th meeting, are they in here? I
Yes.
did read the
Oh, they
minutes.
are.
So
Yeah,
the responses,
they're in the back.
okay. So I must have misunderstood what was said.
Yes.
That
So-
from that 24th meeting, a majority of these were wording, real simple wording issues. The two big issues were the Roberts Rules, and then what I see as a big issue that we're going to have to hammer out, because it's also on the other one, is the citizen, or the committee of appointments, because right here it just says, we do it, not through any
Not
other
how,
process.
yeah.
And if I can remember, this was actually a very thoroughly vetted subcommittee process, and when it was brought back to the city council, a lot of the work has been done, and there was general agreement to make these changes, but then we had the transition and it went on hold.
Okay.
So in our expectation for this evening was if there was anything glaring at you that you did not agree to, that we would bring that back to you, but we'd like to prepare a resolution with the city attorney to bring this back the first meeting in January, for you to amend the council rules and to accept these changes. But if you want more time to look at it, you're certainly welcome to have that as well.
What would you guys like to do? Me being part of this committee, I'm very comfortable with this document, obviously, because it was my committee.
I would suggest, from what I heard, that we read page 1, or not necessarily read, say, is there any questions on page 1, and move to the next page, and expedite this. If there's
Through it all
something
again,
needs to be
page by
talked about,
page.
we'll talk about it.
You guys want to do it that way? Go through it page by page, which was done at that one council meeting, but we can do it again.
Well, like I say, I've gone through it with you also, so I'm good with
Michael,
the-
how would you
the
like to
change.
do it?
That sounds like a good procedure.
Page by page?
Page by page, yes.
Linda? Counselor Neese?
Yeah, page by page.
Counselor Tracy?
I'll go with that.
Okay, all right. So then, the new document that was left up here, page 1, A, authority. Would anybody like to see any changes? I take that as a no. How about B, definitions? Nope. C, council meetings. All right.
Mayor?
Yes.
On item 6, the last time you met, our city attorney recommended that the last sentence there that's underlined in red, that it read Oregon Public Meetings Law rather than Oregon Public Records Law.
Okay. So change record to meetings. And Tammy Bannock is sitting there going, I've
Yes.
already done all this.
Nope, we'll
All
get
right.
it.
Do whatever
Yep.
you need us to
Meetings.
do.
All right.
And I assume that that would also apply to number 7 on the next page?
Oregon Public Meetings Law.
We don't, he's not here tonight, but is there an Oregon Public Records law, or
Yeah.
is it all?
We'll verify
is.
and make sure that we have the proper wording there.
Okay. Anything else in section C? All right, section D. All right, page 3, section E. All right, next page. Continuation of section E, council discussions and decorum. Section F, motions.
Well, let me go back to,
Yes.
Section E. I just wanted to say, this is one of the things where we did make some changes, and we've actually tried to operate more or less under this procedure this year, allowing public comment on individual agenda
Yeah.
items rather than putting it all at the beginning or all at the end. I
Mhm.
think that's been a positive change. I'd be curious if any counselors felt it's been a problem with the process. We've tried to adhere to that and almost made every item kind of like a public, what's the term? A public hearing.
Hearing.
Yes.
No, I've
and-
heard positive things about it.
Yeah.
People really
I think
like
that's
that.
only, I say not only reasonable, but I mean, why not get the information from the public when we're discussing
Mhm.
that
Makes
particular item, rather than, it all being thrown at us at the beginning.
It also creates an opportunity for the public to react to things that we have shared, and maybe point out something that we haven't considered. So I think that's, in the interest of trying to be more transparent and open and collaborative with citizens, I like that.
All right, section F, motions. Nothing? All right, section G, council member conduct. H, confidentiality. I, communication with staff. J, minutes. K, adjournment. L, bias and disqualification. M, ex parte contacts and disqualification. N, Oregon Government Ethics Commission requirements and reporting. O, Oregon Public Records Law. Should that be record meetings law? Since you're checking the others, just make
Yeah.
sure you include that.
There is a difference.
They'll ask the attorney
Right,
and
but I'm
make
just
them
saying that there
make
is.
it right. Okay.
I guess the minutes are records, and
Yeah.
so that item 7 on about the second page probably should be records. It was, the first reference that was, had to do with the meeting
Right.
yeah, having to do with, not with the recording or minutes of it.
Okay,
Right.
well, staff will make sure that we have the right,
So you hold a meeting in
Text in there.
compliance with the meetings law, you keep the minutes in compliance with the records law.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
good.
all right.
So Q is the section that you may or may not want to accept the proposed amendment.
Right.
Not there, we're at P.
Oh,
We'll go.
okay, sorry.
P, legal advice. All right, now we're at Q, which is, are we going to keep it as Robert's Rules of Order and not do Sturgis? So I would like all of you to at least look at what Sturgis is. Not at this point, maybe we can do that later, but I think it's more appropriate for smaller jurisdictions.
Well, and I've checked with other communities and cities, and they're all using Robert's Rules of Order, and a lot of them are not.
That's funny, because I went through the League of Oregon Cities, and they say more and more are going to Sturgis.
Because I talked with Lake Oswego, I've talked to Tigard, I talked to Tualatin, and Milwaukee, and they are staying with
Yeah,
Robert's
that's
rules.
fine. I mean, we can do that, but I just think that Sturgis eventually is a little bit less onerous.
It's a lot easier to read.
Yeah.
Maybe you could explain why.
Yeah,
So
well,
Roberts,
I can get you the bullet points from League of Oregon City.
Right, what about
It's
right
more
now?
layman's.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I would see, right now I would say no because.
No, let's go ahead and stick
because-
with Roberts.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
okay.
that's fine. When I have a good
For
case,
Robert, myself.
when I have a good case and the bullet points, then I'll throw it at you guys again.
Okay.
All right, so we won't go with Sturgis, we'll keep the Roberts Rules of Order. All right, R, commissions, boards, committees, organizations, and media.
Mayor,
Yes.
I think this is one where, we kind of have to kind of coordinate the work of the two different committees to make sure that we're consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And because we've done a lot of appointments lately, and we have some coming up, it's probably the most important area that we settle on a policy for. So maybe we should hold this one and look at it in connection with the work of the other committee at the same time.
Okay. Well, maybe what we should do is accept this the way it is, just so that we at least have something in place, and then integrate what we've decided in the next piece of this meeting, which is the committee discussion.
Question I have, which has also been asked of me, and said I'd bring it up when we discuss this again, which is now, on R1D, citizens can only serve on two, committees, boards, commissions. Does that include an ad hoc committee? Or should it include? I don't think it should.
No, I don't think that it should either.
Because generally, those are
Temporary.
short-term, right, and temporary.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say that in here, and I think we should.
But it says a citizen should not, so that doesn't mean a citizen
can.
cannot.
That's true.
Okay.
Okay.
So that would be
Fine.
my answer to that. So that a citizen can serve on more than two city commissions. By reading this, it says they should not, but that doesn't mean that we cannot.
Well, that leaves it flexible.
Okay.
So then I think you could serve on that ad hoc easily if that was a.
Yeah.
So-
Reading it that way, I read that as. Sorry.
Yeah, no. If it said shall,
Well, I don't know. That's
Or
also
cannot.
cannot.
cannot, yeah.
'Cause
So just a point of clarification as we get into the next agenda item, under the roles and responsibilities, what we have proposed is it says individuals may not be appointed to more than two boards, commissions, or committees at one time.
Okay.
If an individual is serving on more than one board, commission, or committee, they may not serve as the chair of both.
Right.
So if what we're wanting to do is standardize language, we could use that language in the council rules, but I think what Councilor Milch is saying is that as we go through our next agenda item to make sure that section R and what we're proposing in the next item are
Yes.
consistent.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure.
I just don't want to
Right.
hold this
Yeah.
up.
No. And he correct in the subcommittee. There was I don't want to say a lot of discussion, but that was discussed at length, making sure that we didn't make proposals that would
To be contradictory.
to what the other subcommittee was doing.
Okay, so that piece will just wait to the next agenda item. All right, S is city administrator evaluation. All right, T is council expenses.
I'm curious.
Oh.
Administrative, does this fall within the contract we have with you?
Yeah, I don't think it's been looked at with the contract that we entered into, so I would have to take a look at it. So again, this section then needs to be consistent with what's already approved in the city administrator contract.
It may be an off year for you simply because we just signed the contract, so this would put your evaluation March 1st, which is,
Yeah, reference to specific dates wouldn't seem to be
yeah.
applicable. in this case.
No, it would be kind of ridiculous to do a full evaluation on you just a couple months after you became our administrator.
And I think we had it in the contract that we wouldn't do that.
I think so.
Right.
if I'm
Well,
not
you could
mistaken.
also just put in accordance with city administrator's contract too, and keep it simple that way.
That's what I was thinking, because
Yeah.
the next city administrator in 10 years.
Yes, in 10 years.
may-
Thank you.
I was
Maybe a
thinking-
completely different contract, and I think that's a good idea, maybe just to put in that for the city administrator evaluation, that it's however the council at that time sets the contract up, or as per
In
contract.
accordance with the current
Yeah, and
city
then just make it
administrator.
to where we,
Contract.
each time,
Okay,
I
do
agree
a
with
contract.
okay.
Yes, I will check that. In 10
Okay.
years.
Can I go back to the previous section? There's a line on here that I have some concern about.
Okay.
I just noticed. At the top of page 12, item E, so that would be R1E. With the consent of the council, the mayor may remove a citizen from a city committee prior to the expiration of the term of office. The language in the previous sections there generally is a little more broad. It uses the term commissions, boards, or committees. And some of our city committees are just called a committee, some are called boards, some are called commissions.
Do we want to broaden that here then? to be-
That's the question I was raising. Do we want to broaden it to,
I think that was the intent, was
okay.
for all of the appointed.
So,
So expand that.
so rather than the word committee,
It'd be
from
committee,
a
commissions,
city
and boards.
board, however, what the order is.
Board and commission.
Commission, board, or committee.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Are we done with that section? And we've got S covered, and then T is council expenses. All right, well, that's that document. Somebody want to make a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was writing down the other thing. Under council expenses.
Yes.
There was confusion over the language. It said councilor expenditures for other than routine expenses, for example, conference registration, travel, etc., require advance mayor approval.
Mm-hmm.
And the interpretation we decided on was that conference registration and travel were examples of routine, non-routine
Mm-hmm.
expenses.
Yes.
And since the parenthetical phrase follows the expression routine expenses, some of us thought that those were
That meant
examples of
routine.
routine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So,
How do we reword that
so
that it's...
David's suggestion was that conference registration, travel are examples of non-routine expenses.
Okay. Got it. Do you have all this, Tammy?
We're working on it.
All right. Well, you have the recording, so...
Yes.
Okay. So, would someone like to make a motion then?
Well, I move that we accept the, is it resolution? Yeah, resolution 1028, Exhibit A.
I
as-
second that.
With the
okay.
changes.
With the with the changes.
Seconded by Tom. Motion was made by Counselor Reisner, seconded by Counselor Mercero. Any further discussion?
It's just,
So it's a work session, what do we?
Oh, do we,
Oh,
we
oh,
don't,
that's
we don't
right.
make a motion?
Oh, but if it makes you guys feel good.
I think it, no, I would rather do that just so that we have something.
and as I understand it, what we'll be doing is we're creating a new resolution.
Yes.
And this Exhibit A will be the attachment to that resolution, which
Right.
fleshes out what that resolution does.
Yes.
So, okay.
So you're giving us direction to come back at the first meeting in January with a resolution to amend the city council rules. And that's a great way to kick off the new year. And then the second item would be hopefully that we could come back and ask you to approve a resolution to also approve the roles and responsibilities of city boards, commissions, and committees, so that in late January we could have our annual volunteer committee appreciation, ethics training, here's your new rules and responsibilities, and try to kick that off. So
Yeah.
if we're not quite there in January, that's fine, but that's our intent around this. So also in your packet then, what you have is round 2.
Okay, well, hold on. I just want to make sure that we have a consensus that this is the direction that we want to go. So we're okay with the changes for city rules. Michael, you're okay with that?
Yes.
Counselor Neese?
Yes.
Counselor Tracy? Counselor Mercero?
Yep.
Counselor McMahon?
Yes.
Counselor Reisner? Yes, okay, perfect.
Okay. So in your packet, you have another reworked revision. So there's a timeline in your staff report that shows how we came to tonight. And the subcommittee met after the September work session. So we met again on October 10th and said, okay, here's the notes from the council meeting. What do we want to do? So what is in your packet tonight is the track change version of the comments made from the September work session. And again, you get 10 different working copies, and it becomes convoluted. And so we just printed out the most recent changes. And if you could look past the formatting, all of that will come to be when we come back with a resolution to modify these. And there's actually going to be several ordinance and resolution amendments, because all of these boards, committees, and commissions are everywhere in the city code and in resolutions that we have to come back and repeal and make one standardized process. So just to highlight, you have the tracked changes. The subcommittee agreed that administratively vacant applications will be advertised for a 30-day period. We all agreed on that. And that internally we will do a notice in the local newspaper, in the city's newsletter, on the website, and it'll be posted at the senior center, library, and post office.
Perfect.
Our subcommittee, and if this is different with the entire council, that's fine, we can have the discussion. If there is more than one open position and only one applicant, the city would accept that application and keep the vacancy open until filled, and then applications will be submitted to the city recorder and kept confidential until the closing date. And there was some discussion regarding the process. And in the current code, it states, in order to become more familiar with the applicant's qualification, the council may interview all applicants for a vacancy. We felt that that language was adequate and a separate interview process should not be created. So simply what the subcommittee is saying is, we heard your comments, we met again and went through the administrative nightmare it would create to do interviews for all of these committee processes, and we've decided that just having that language stand as is in the code is adequate for that. If you wanted to do a separate process for the planning commission at some time, you could do that, but that you're not requiring this.
Okay.
If the council wants to revisit that and create a interview process for all of the openings each year, my suggestion would come back to have to think about administratively how we would staff to do that type of position. And so really, as you go through the document here, I think that we made all of the other recommended changes that you asked in regards to, we added voting age, so any individual of voting age could submit their names. All the items highlighted in red then are the changes that we agreed with from that last work session. And they're actually pretty simple, so unless you wanted to go through these page by page as well, my guess is that there's a lot of discussion probably around the process for which people are appointed to the position.
Well, I think we should go through each page because I have things to talk about, but what do you guys want to do on this one? Page by page?
page by page,
Okay,
for me, yeah.
page by page. So we should start with page 1, which is 2.3, which is, what do we call this? Carrying out the board duties. Any questions or comments on that one? Attendance of meetings. We're good? All right, page 2. Oh, Michael, you had something? Excuse me,
Okay.
Counselor Milch.
And this does clarify that all the boards, commissions, and committees are public meetings and have to be done according to public meetings law.
Correct.
And I'm not sure that was always clear to some. I was on the Downtown Revitalization Committee, and a couple times there were members of that group that said, let's just get the citizens that are on that committee together to, to talk about some
Yeah.
things, and I really didn't think that was an appropriate way
Well,
to
I
do
think
it.
that's more of an ad hoc kind of
Maybe
committee.
it was, yeah.
Which is a lot less
Standing
formal.
committees do need to be.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad we're making this clear to the members, and certainly the chairpersons need to be aware of that.
Okay, attendance of meetings then. Page 2, individual conduct of board members. Board conduct with media and social media. And Gladstone Municipal Code and board bylaws. Okay.
So, well, I'm curious about the board bylaws. Some have bylaws and some don't. Are we eliminating them, or?
Yes, I believe and that's where all of these layers have to be peeled back. Those that have bylaws they'll have to be repealed in the package. So whatever consensus you come to this evening is when we will then get legal involved to help us identify which boards and committees have bylaws that will need to be repealed, because what we're trying to do is have the standardized guidelines for member conduct, which is on page 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4. So we're trying to remove the bylaws from individual committees and put everything in a standard.
Okay.
And that was the main reason for doing all this in the first place.
Correct.
Yep. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, page 3, 2.10.010, applicability. Any questions?
Why the change from board to committee? What do people see the difference as in terms of the definition of those? We had a letter from a member of that group too who agreed with the change, and I just wondered just to understand the distinction.
And Colin is sick this evening, so I didn't get to follow up with him on this, but I can get the clarity, the recommended changes from him on that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can't remember why we changed it from board to committee. So,
I like the fact that it's very clear that these are advisory boards.
yes.
That's very important that people understand that these are advisory boards.
And it could be that the Senior Center Advisory Board was not created by an ordinance or a resolution. And if that's the case, that's why it is a committee. So I'll have to check with that, because there's a compelling reason to be called a board versus a committee. If the Senior Center Advisory Committee was created by an ordinance or resolution, then we could keep it as board. But I will follow up with Colin on that one.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else on that section? So we have 2.10.020 definitions. Good on that one? All right, 2.10.030 board, commission, and committee appointments.
I have a
Go ahead.
comment. We made the change to say of voting age, and this question has come up every once in a while where somebody who's not 18 could serve. It's not unheard of for some cities to have either a commission that is devoted to the concerns of youth and children, and that includes some minors on it.
Phones
also,
off.
what?
That's nothing, I just said phones off.
Oh. And also, I've found examples from other cities where they have, they specifically have choose to have a student, a high school student under the age of 18, serve as a non-voting member of a committee, particularly with regard to the areas of work like parks and library that, where part of their mission is specifically relates to children and youth. I don't think we need to make a change here, but I'd like us at some time in the future to explore the possibility of encouraging more involvement in local government by young people.
We're
either in a
discussing that
formal
tomorrow
or
night, as a
informal.
matter of fact.
Oh, at the school board?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe we'll get some
That's
good
our
input from
agenda
the
item.
school board as well. And, okay.
So
But
we
I-
received
well, I guess-
comments last meeting that individuals should be a registered voter, and
Right.
we didn't necessarily want to put that in there, so we just put a voting age. But if a majority of the council wants to leave it as is, we could remove that proposal.
I don't think that it has to be a voting age. I would love to encourage high school students to get involved.
Well,
And
we
just
had
because
one,
they
remember?
vote, that means that they're a better citizen of the city. They're all citizens. They all should have a voice.
Right. And I know of several, like I said, we did have on the charter committee
Yes,
back last
young
year. But my thought too, and it's something that when I read this, I was thinking of your grandson, and then you brought up parks, the gentleman that worked up at the nature park, and on my way in, I heard actually it was a commercial scouting saying, and one thing that they put in there besides the other community projects was being involved in local government.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that be it a junior or a senior that's not 18 would be a great asset to
Mm-hmm.
some of these of our committees.
Jackie, maybe we can, I'm sorry, Linda.
Go ahead.
I just am saying maybe we should specify position of the chair, if that's really what we're going for here, 'cause I can't see anything. I mean, I'm in
I
agreement.
just think that we leave it as was originally proposed and say any individual is encouraged to submit their name for consideration to the city. Because I do think that you're going to find a school board that's going to want to encourage youth participation in our committee. So we were simply responding to what some citizens in the audience asked for at the last meeting, but we can take this out.
What do you all think?
I'm all right with that.
Yep, me too.
Up to. And
Okay.
it's great to do that because the city of Happy Valley as well as Tiger, they have what they call youth councils.
Yep.
And it would really be nice if we could see something like that happen here in Gladstone. And it's very successful.
Okay, so we'll leave it as it was.
And I think our library currently has a youth advisory committee that they, I'm not sure how active it is, but I have seen signs about it. So they at least are soliciting involvement at the library, not in official capacity like the board. But Natalie, do you happen to know about how active that group is?
I'm not even aware that we actually have one formed. I think there's been talk about it.
Oh, okay.
But to my knowledge, unless Clint, do you know anything about it?
I think it was like an unofficial advisory committee that one of the previous library directors had together.
Okay. Like I said, I'd only seen signs, so I didn't know how active it was. If they were, choosing the video games or helping select books or what.
I don't think it's active right now.
I doubt whether it's active because there is no permanent director and so many things have changed in the last couple of years. It's not a part of the library advisory board.
Okay.
Well, hopefully we can set the example.
Yeah.
And start moving. Okay, so anything else under board, commission, and committee appointments?
No, but please just make note of number C there that says, in order to become more familiar with the applicant's qualification, the council may interview all applicants for a vacancy.
Right.
Okay. Anything-
What would it be possible to add a provision for the chair of the board, commission, or committee and council liaison doing interviews? I mean, I noticed that was the policy of another city that I saw somewhere mentioned in a something like this. And again, I think it would be better if we have consistency and not, you know, flop around from one method to another. I mean, it sounds like now what we're saying, either the council interviews or no interviews are done. And I thought maybe there was something kind of in between.
Yeah, I think that there should be something in between, because my take on this is that if the council is the only group that has a say in the appointment, that could be very self-serving. And I would like to have others involved as well.
You could leave it as is and just say, in order to become more familiar with the applicant's qualifications, the council or its designee may interview all applicants for a vacancy.
I think that sounds good.
And that leaves it open too.
Yeah.
I like that.
And I think part of the issue that we dealt with at the subcommittees was we didn't want to create as huge of a monster as I think we may have a little bit, especially as far as staff time.
Right.
We were trying to avoid having too much meeting time for staff just for Senior Center Advisory Committee or whatever we want for there. So that was one of the issues that we struggle with. Is it's great to have all these interviews, but at what point do you, for a city this size, do we say, I'd rather have a police station and city hall and spend the money there than an interview process that gets pretty onerous for staff.
And an example I could think of is, let's say you only have one opening on the budget committee, but you get 5 applicants. This allows you then to interview and do a process, but you're not required to do it for every instance.
Yeah, I think this is flexible enough.
And in that case, it might be helpful to have Carolyn or whoever's in that role part of the process for something that important, but we wouldn't make it a required routine method that we would always bring staff in to do that.
Okay.
And then as far as like on one other point there, when it's one open position, or if there's more than one open position and we get only one applicant, that doesn't mean that we have to choose that applicant.
Right.
We still will vote on that one applicant, and it may be that we still have 2 vacancies.
Right.
And I also think a comment was made in regards to, isn't it in state law for the Library Advisory Board that they have to interview, and it's not. We checked that.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
What about the 2-year, the 2-term limit?
We're getting to that on the next page.
Okay. We're continuing on page 4. Questions?
Well, in regards to that, it does. And but the question I have is under F, doesn't 1 and 3 pretty much say the same thing? And I'm questioning if we want to limit members to only 3 terms. Because I know it's been extremely helpful on the Planning Commission having people there for long term.
The institutional knowledge is very helpful for that group.
And especially if we're going, we're going to continue working with the county for our planning services, and we don't know how. I'll say not necessarily reliable, but how are they going to be here for 2 or 3 years, or
So do you want to strike the 3 successive terms and not have a term limit? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, that's what I would prefer, because I mean they are up every, is it 4 years? 4 years. So the council can and has in the past not elected to continue somebody on on the commission, or even boards also.
So we could, number 1 and 3 are redundant, so you could strike number 1 altogether.
Okay. Number
2 does have the language from ORS 357 465, Public Library Board allows 2 successful terms on the library board, but any person may be appointed again to the board after an interval of 1 year. So we took that language specifically out of the ORS. So that's its own bullet item for the Library Advisory Board.
Okay.
So what Counselor Reisner is saying is that should we only have 3 successful terms on any other board or commission, or do you want it to be greater?
Or just strike 3 as well, so that
'Cause
there
we-
aren't those
Right.
term limits at all.
Because we currently don't have any.
Discussion?
I'd be all right with that too, because yeah, we do have the opportunity throughout the whole year if we are unhappy with somebody, and then also when they reapply to.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be all right with that, because I think though we have a lot of people applying right now, over the last couple of years,
That
5
hasn't
years
been the
ago,
case.
we struggled to fill a lot of times. And I think that's once we get a library built and the city hall built, everybody's going to disappear again, and then we're going to struggle.
No, you're all going to be on ad hoc
Then we're going to
committees.
struggle to do this. So I'd be all right with striking both those as well, and just leaving the item number 2.
I agree.
So well, I'll need to reword section F just a little bit so that it coincides with only the term being referred to on the Library Advisory Board. But what you're saying is that you don't want to have term limits on our boards and committees, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And just for clarification, you said we don't have it now, but this looks like this is language that is being changed.
No, so I think what this, correct me if I'm not, Administrator Betts, but I think the original copy was so terrible, this is what we kind of came up with last year as the starting point. So
Okay.
a lot of this was not, is brand new.
So this may have been borrowed from another municipality and
It's
used
something
as
that
a
we talked
template
about
to-
probably 2 years ago on city council or something, and that's how it got into here.
Okay.
It was not
That's
but
correct.
it-
previously
this is-
on
This
here.
is not a change of current municipal
No,
code. Okay.
no.
Right, no, we're, okay.
Anything else in that section?
That's very good feedback.
All right, so the next is 2.10.40, removal.
And again, we'll want to make sure that this language is consistent with what is in the council rules that we will be adopting, so I will cross-reference those 2 sections as well.
Okay, so this says that someone may be removed at any time and for any reason by a majority vote of the city council. But that isn't necessarily true for all of our commissions, boards, and committees, is that correct?
I'm trying to see what is in the council rules on the previous item on the removal of a member. I'd have to find it.
So do you think that
Because I
that's
think
not...
the exception is planning commission. That we cannot remove somebody for any reason from planning commission. So if that has a different set of rules, it needs to be in here.
Is that
And I
because
think
of-
that may be in the code under the planning commission
Okay.
section. So
So
if we
it's
make
there, we need
this
to have it
change-
here too.
If we make that change, we also have to amend
Move
that
the
section of
worker.
the code that references the procedure by which, and that is something that we would also need to check and see whether there's any state
Right.
requirement.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if it's in the code and we want, it needs to be integrated right here.
Okay, so in the council rules that you just reviewed, the section says, citizen removal. With the consent of the council, the mayor may remove a citizen from a city commission, board, committee prior to the expiration of the term of office. So that's the language that you will want to have in this section as well.
Right.
So we have consistent.
Right.
Okay.
But my understanding is planning commission has a different set of rules. That you can't just remove someone for any reason. There's
In the
specific-
charter or something
It's
different?
in
or-
section 2.28 of the municipal code.
Okay.
And let me see if I can,
And I don't know if it's because it's a quasi-judicial body or why there's the difference.
the language we currently have in section 2.28.040 reads, appointments to fill vacancies shall be for the, a member may be removed by the city council after hearing for misconduct, misfeasance, malfeasance, or non-performance of duty. And there's a reference, a statutory reference to ORS 227.030. And so I think we need to check and see whether the reason that language is in there is because of state law, or whether it's just something that we as a city chose to adopt that we could change.
And so I do believe you're correct that it's state law, but what I want to make sure is that the language that we're amending in the council rules and what we're amending in the roles and responsibilities is going to be consistent.
Which is this right here.
Yes.
Which is perfect. But I just want to make sure that either Planning Commission falls under this language, or do we have to have a separate section just for Planning Commission?
And I will probably have to reference except for Planning Commission per ORS and cite that in there.
If that
but I will
is
go
relevant.
ahead and
if it's not relevant,
do that.
it would be easier just to have everything lumped together.
Yes.
Okay. So, next section, 2.10.050, organization and operation.
There was a lot of discussion around the work plan, and again, a work plan is a work plan. We couldn't think of anything else to call it, and so what we tried to put in there is that we would clarify when the work plan would need to be developed, and that's going to be up to the staff person for each of these board or commissions and committee to work with the chairperson on creating a work plan.
So, by work plan, do you mean recommendations from council on specific topics that they need to work through for the year? I know with the Economic Development Commission for the county commissioners at the beginning of the year say, these are the things we want you guys to do. And you have a year to do it.
The intent of this work plan is the city has a 5-year strategic plan that the city council and staff updates in January. We are getting ready to update ours in January 2018. That strategic plan would go to the committees, and those committees would develop their work plan according to what the council has identified in the strategic plan.
Okay, so the council still gives some direction
Yes.
on the topics that they need to address.
Now, not all the committees may have something in the strategic plan, and so that's where the chairperson and the staff person can work with that committee to identify maybe a couple of objectives for the year. But it's to be driven by the strategic plan that the city council has in place. Yes.
Okay. I want to make sure that all of our advisory groups are being used to the best possible degree. So giving them direction on things that we would like them to discuss and work through would be perfect.
Yes.
Okay. And then minutes. We are now keeping minutes for all of our committees, boards, and commissions. Is that correct?
Yeah, and this past year it's worked remarkable. Yes.
And we have agendas, and the agendas are posted as well.
Yes.
So everybody has access to that. Okay, perfect. All right.
Speaking of agendas, though, on C, it states that staff sets the agenda. I think it should be staff working with the chair sets the agenda. At least, I know with the library, that's how it...
I'd sure hate to tie their hands. I think that they will probably, my guess is, meet with the chair, but yeah.
Well,
I
because I'm you know, who's the way I see this is staff is the one, running the show,
Okay.
whereas
But these
isn't
are
it the
advisory
citizens?
groups. These aren't
Right.
the city council.
Oh no, I understand that.
Okay. Well,
I don't know,
suppose
that's
if the
just-
chairs of these different advisory groups have issue with the agenda, then they can go to staff and tweak it.
I agree.
Okay, and I know that happens.
Could we add just a phrase, though? Staff in consultation with the committee chair shall set the agenda? Is that too?
I think some of the chairs aren't real active chairs.
Right.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
it's very informal most of the time, unless we have big topics on our plate. So I don't know how staff feels about that. I think it would just coordinating, getting together, and
We have
Sometimes
one
they're-
chair here tonight.
yeah. Randy, do you want to help set the agenda for the planning commission?
Well, I'll change the agenda if I feel like I want to, reorder things or add things.
During the meeting,
Right.
yeah.
But I think, when staff puts together the agenda for the meeting, they're doing it based on the work that's coming before them. I don't think they need to check with me on that.
Okay. That's helpful, because, yeah, I forgot that you can do the same thing we always do and say, are there any changes to the agenda? And if you had a good reason to change it in front of staff and with the rest of the group, that could happen. So I think that's
Yeah.
probably fine.
Okay. So that ends organization operation. So page 7 is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. I have a quick question. Under this advisory board, are water resources included, Jim?
What do you
I'm not
mean?
talking about WUBER, I'm talking about water resources,
I'm not following you.
i.e. water park, water trails.
Yeah, trails and any park and recreation facility, so,
So when we
Like-
have water resource type of rec things coming up, then that would fall under this board.
right. I mean, it could.
Okay.
We haven't had any of those since I've been here in 2
We-
years, but
we
it-
will.
Okay, yep.
Just giving you a heads up.
That would be
so-
the recreation piece, I would imagine.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
good. Okay, so anything else on Parks and Rec? Budget Committee. All right, Planning Commission. You all are doing a wonderful job, by the way.
Mhm.
Oh, and Parks and Rec, too. Doing a great job. Next is Traffic Safety Advisory Board. And I have a question on this one, sorry, and I know that Jeff isn't here, Chief Jolly. Traffic safety, why is that just traffic safety? Why is it not public safety? And the reason that I ask is because the public safety piece as a whole is it's full of holes, and somehow we need to capture that somewhere. And traffic safety seems like the best place.
Could you clarify
Something-
what you mean by full of holes? That's not clear. to
Well,
me.
like CERT, neighborhood emergency is that what's called? Neighborhood emergency teams, neighborhood watches, safety, crime outreach, all of those things are just kind of thrown to the wind and somebody picks them up. But it would be nice if we had an advisory board, a group that kind of oversees that. Not oversees it, but puts their arms around it and takes it on.
Chief Jolly and Chief O'Connor specifically asked, if I remember right, that not be included.
Well, my concern is that they misunderstand what these boards are, that they're not an oversight board, that they're simply advisory boards, and I think that they would get a lot of value having a group of people that support their missions. Neighborhood Watch is a great example where we don't have the staff to do it, but it's something that the citizens really want. And if we could fold that into a public safety board, then maybe attention would be placed on those type of efforts.
So before we,
I'm not saying we need to do it now, but I think we need to discuss it. I think it's something that we really need to think about. We've got levies coming up, and if we could get more people to support those efforts, the better.
That's fine. I just, as long as we're not doing that tonight.
Yeah.
Because they were pretty adamant, both of those chiefs were pretty adamant that, if that's the direction we want to go, they want to, have input, so.
Okay, that's fine. I just think they misunderstood that these aren't oversight
They
groups,
were,
they're
that's what
advisory.
they, and that's what I would be afraid of as well, is that they would turn into, oversight
Yes,
issues.
and that's, yeah, and that's
But-
what,
right.
advisory, that's.
Right. Just like the library board is not an oversight of the library. I take it the senior center board or committee, whatever name we're gonna
Okay.
give it.
Well, we don't need to get
Semi-correct.
into the details, but
Well,
anyway.
a question I have is, when will we talk about readdressing this then?
I think we could, February.
Well, just so I,
Once adopted.
I do not have a majority of the council that wants to revisit this, and
Okay.
in the email that I had sent previously as to the reasons why we weren't revisiting this, it's because we did not have a majority of the council
Or
that
to turn it
wanted
into a public safety.
That's correct.
Okay, well, that's fine. Then I'll just be campaigning for that and might come up again in the future.
May I apologize, may I return to one item on the planning commission
Mm-hmm.
page? We have had language regarding selection of planning commission members that giving preference to people who had either through their, well, I guess generally through their professional
code,
experience,
yeah.
some familiarity or involvement with this.
Mhm.
The committee has removed that language. I know a former counselor thought it was goofy, and it's not there. We did retain language that is referenced in state codes about no more than 2 people in the same or in the real estate profession. But the last time we appointed a new member to the planning commission, we made sure that the interviewing committee was familiar with that preference. We expanded the interview questions to ask them about not only their work experience qualifications, but education qualifications, which might lend to a strength in that capacity. I wasn't a part of the group that removed it from this, but I'm wondering if there was, if I could get some more feedback from the subcommittee on why that language was removed.
Councilor McMahon?
No.
No.
You don't know, or?
No, I do not know.
Oh. I know that the city of West Lynn has language identical to ours, or what had been in ours, on that issue. I don't know if expressing, preference shall be given is problematic in any way, but I want to be sure that we're not removing it on the recommendation of a counselor who's no longer a part of the council, and for no other reason than that. Any input?
I'd be happy just to say, one, that a former counselor's input is not in here at all throughout the document. 2, it's a matter of preference, like West Lynn has it, Milwaukee doesn't. That's the model that we went with. I don't think there's a right or wrong. If it's something that a majority of you want in there, we can add it back in there. It's just a matter of preference.
And again, I think the problem was, in a couple of years, it may be that there is only one person applying again. Neil was on the commission, I've been on the commission, Tammy's been on the commission, Tom has, and amongst the 3 or 4 of us, I don't know that any of us had a lot of experience in any of these things, as far as building, selling, designing.
Construction.
So maybe
with it,
we would be limiting ourselves in a city this size if we were a little bit too specific in terms of what we're looking for.
I think so.
Okay.
Well, and I think that if we move forward the way that we would like to move forward is, when we were all on planning, we didn't get any training. It was, here you are, you're on planning commission, you're making these land use decisions, and you have no idea what you're doing, sink or swim. Where now we're going to offer the training and the tools so that they can do their jobs. They understand what it is that they're doing. So I think the qualifications moving forward may not be, no, I can't say that. They're going to be very important because the decisions are going to get trickier. The easy land use decisions are done. Everything else, it's going to be complicated, but we're going to try and give everybody the tools that they need.
So that individually, we as counselors who would be involved in the appointment of somebody might still see those as very good and choose to give preference to somebody who had that experience because we understand the value of it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not going to limit ourselves necessarily and you know, intentionally favor one person over another just because of that. There may be other factors involved. I guess that's the way I would operate. So I'd be willing to just leave the statutory language in there and not have that other.
All right. So we're off of traffic. Library Advisory Board. Anything? All right. Senior Center Advisory Board, page 13. All right. 14.
Just as clarification there to show inconsistency, it is established according to an ordinance. So if that is the case, then I would agree that the Senior Center Advisory should remain a board and not a committee. So that's the fact that I will double check and reconfirm.
And page 14 is the Audit Committee. So it says up to 6 members, so it could be 2 members, it could be 3 members, 4 okay.
Yep.
If I have an opportunity to talk, should I talk when you're talking about the senior center stuff, or?
It's
Yeah, I would
informal,
think
so
so.
if you had something to say about the Senior Center, please.
Okay, my comments kind of center on 3 different things. The one thing was the name change.
Yes.
Handout that we had in January, I believe it does refer to ordinances for creating
Correct.
senior center, it's called the board.
I think you have a copy of Katie's comments on your dais.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so anyway, I've kind of reversed my opinion on that, and on the email, we talked about what's okay with committee, but then I looked through there some more, and all of them are called boards except for the audit and the budget, which doesn't meet on a yearly basis, you know, at a certain time. So, I would hope that the board name would continue on instead of it changing it to a committee.
Okay.
Because you guys meet quarterly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we do, and that's my next comment. There was quite a bit of discussion about the meeting quarterly, at our last, quarterly advisory board meeting. And, the thought there is to, if we're trying to streamline and keep things consistent, why don't we, leave it optional for us to meet on a monthly basis?
Oh,
And everybody else.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you, absolutely.
So, I think there's some pluses for doing that too, meeting on a monthly basis. At least he's leaving that option open there, because it gives better communication and transparency to the, among the department head and the board members and staff and that sort of thing. And, there's some things that we don't have time apparently to discuss. We haven't, spent like a year and a half since we had any kind of discussion about, the budget or any kind of financial reports.
The
Anything.
Senior Center?
Yeah, right.
Because we don't have those anymore?
Well,
Right.
okay, but anyway, it's listed under those established purpose things about the budget. I've been on there for 4 years and there's never been any kind of discussion in the advisory board about the budget.
Yeah, that probably needs to be
So I'm
changed.
saying there are some things in there that are listed under the essential purposes that we haven't been doing, and so, you know, we need more time there to do that.
Mhm.
The last 2 meetings that we had, we weren't able to complete the agenda that was, you know, listed there for us. So I think there's some benefits to meeting on a monthly, whether we do it or not, but at least
Okay.
have that available. In the past year or two, there's been a couple people where I asked them if they were going to reapply to be on the board. and he said, no, nothing gets done. And I think
Well.
part of that, can be hooked to this fact that we meet quarterly. You know, it's so slow, and there's really not a lot of follow-up through on that, and, so they feel more a vital part, of what's going on.
Okay.
You know, monthly meetings instead of quarterly.
So this doesn't limit you to quarterly meetings.
That's
This does-
correct.
So you can meet monthly.
Yeah.
We're not limiting you to quarterly.
Yes, we're not proposing any language that says the senior center meets on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
What it says is that each board, commission, or committee should meet at least once each month or as needed to conduct its business. So it gives the ability for the committee or board to meet monthly, quarterly, twice
Whatever.
a year, so there is flexibility there.
Yeah, so you have that.
Thanks for allowing me to
Yep.
That's correct.
Yep.
And then you've been talking about the annual work plan and that, and so I'm gonna skip over that part. I think there's other things going on there with that. One thing that I did miss, being under the established purpose was, considering, having the senior board be involved in programming and addressing the needs of seniors. In our past, ordinances and whatever the documents are that establish, the purposes of the senior center, that was a pretty big factor in there. That, and it's listed, in the current document that you're discussing, that, under the board membership qualifications, it talks about, programming and addressing the needs of seniors. But that's as far as it goes. It's not included in the essential purpose of the senior center.
Oh, the established
It's
purpose.
in the membership that they're looking for, but, you know,
I think it is covered under established purpose, A, B, C, D, and that needs to be changed to E instead of F. On page 13 in your packet, it says, the board shall be responsible for, but not limited to, reviewing and commenting on rules and policies for the operation of the senior center, commenting on the acceptance or rejection of donations of real or personal property or funds donated to the senior center, commenting on the annual operating budget, commenting on sites for senior services buildings or for location of senior services facilities, such other activities as the council may assign. So I
That
think
leaves
it's
it
covered
broad.
there.
So that leaves,
But,
there's nothing there about programming.
yeah, I think I agree with you.
Factor of the social, you know, the home visits and all this kind of stuff that goes on, that's an important part.
It seems to just describe running a center, but not necessarily the program. The original ordinance 928 that's referenced here, which by the way was repealed by ordinance 983 later, it described the purpose of the board. Its goal is to encourage the development and growth of an energetic senior citizens program, and I think that's what you're saying.
so maybe we
You'd
should
like
have
more
that
reference.
added as E, and
Or
then
F.
leave such other
Oh.
activities as the council may assign, leave that as F.
Okay.
So could you repeat that for me?
Also cite the ordinance to the repeal.
Okay.
I got 983 there, repealed.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm not sure what 983 did then, but in 928, the language that I'm suggesting we add here, responsible, let's see, how should it be? So it should be an ing at the beginning, encouraging the development and growth of an energetic senior citizens program.
Does that work?
I like that.
Perfect.
And you got flexibility. at the
That's
end.
not a program for just energetic senior citizens. That's a senior citizens program which itself is energetic.
All right, perfect.
The last thing was, clarifying about the donations. I'm really concerned that there might not be some clarity needed between the foundation and it talks about deciding about where the donations could go and stuff like that. That was in C, letter C.
Mm-hmm.
What about the foundation? I mean, really
The foundation
Separate
is
entity.
a separate entity
Yeah, that's
altogether.
separate.
Yes.
That's not covered
We
here at all.
cannot
That's,
intertwine the two.
no.
Yeah, shouldn't there be some alluding there to that, because, I mean, we don't, so far, the senior center advisory board isn't making any decisions about the donations and doing it.
The foundation gets donations, and that's something they deal with completely separate.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering why the fee is here.
Just in case the senior center itself gets donations. Yeah, that are separate from the foundation. You're welcome. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming. All right, last is the audit committee, and I think we were good with that one. All right, so are we good to make these changes? And
I'm excited. We're making it, you guys.
All right, so Counselor Milch?
One other question. Do we have any reference in here to the role of the council liaison in relation to these groups and limitations or guidance on that role?
Well, I think that was in
There's some
the,
back in the beginning.
The rules.
more in the,
Council rules?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So are we good to go, Counselor Milch?
We are.
Counselor Neese?
Yes.
Counselor Tracy?
Yes.
Counselor Mercero?
Yes.
Counselor McMahon?
Yes.
Counselor Reisner?
Yes.
Mayor Stemple? Yes. All right. Woohoo!
Wow,
We're getting a lot accomplished.
I know.
All right, the last thing is, I think it's the last thing.
Nope, 2 more.
I've lost my page.
3.
Oh, no, the next thing, communications plan for the city. Where's my page?
Basically, I presented you a statement in the staff report that the council as a whole needs to define what they consider to be a robust public outreach process in regards to the next steps in us moving forward with the two-library approach. So in your packet tonight, first of all, what I have provided you and that will be going out to the public in the near future is you have a memo on the Gladstone Oak Lodge Library public process. You have a copy of the public involvement and communications plan, and you also have a fact sheet, which I think just bodes to show you how closely the county and the city have been working on a weekly basis. This is where my focus has been and been very time consuming. I'm at a point though where I would like council guidance on how much financially we invest into the next stage of getting ready for the May ballot measure. And I know, as you know, I'm very prudent with public dollars and fiscally responsible, but I think we need to have a conversation regarding professional polling abilities so that we know how to gauge educational material and getting ready for the ballot measure. And so what I would like to know is your thoughts. We have not budgeted funds for this. However, I can take it out of contingency in regards to hiring a professional company to help us do a sample poll, which would give us the accurate data for planning the future of the library. That could be doing a sample poll in the population to talk about the location of where we're proposing it, the 6,000 square foot footage, what's the appetite for people wanting to have a capital district, to have a bigger library, and then also to just get some very basic information on the ballot measure. So it's pretty self-explanatory in here, and I would just like your thoughts on the Prospect Media proposal. There's a lot of it's a menu of items that we could order, and I'm not suggesting that we do that, but I am suggesting that you give consideration to allow me to hire to do some polling in the community. And if I got that guidance, I have a list of 4 other agencies that I would contact and get cost proposals as well. But I think the county has done an excellent job of providing staff to me as I need it for putting this information together, and they're also willing to help us prepare an online survey as we go forward getting ready for the ballot measure in May. And so I would just like to know your thoughts and comments, because I think it's very diverse on the council, and I'd like to get a majority so I have a direction to go on the next steps.
Question, well, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Can we spend money in regards to this because of the ballot measures that were passed in regards to the library a few years ago?
We're not spending any money to campaign for the ballot measure.
Well, we can't as a city.
That's correct.
But what I'm saying is there was specific language in those ballot measures about spending money for a future library.
But we've already approved the library.
We didn't do anything we said we were going to do in that approved ballot measure. That was if we built a new library, we could not use general fund dollars to support that. So none of that has come to fruition.
Okay.
So if we needed to hire a company to help us do factual information polling on whether or not they wanted the library here at this site, to do that, it's not campaigning, is what we're not trying to solicit here. We're trying to get some factual scientific data that will help us with the next step.
So I have to agree. This is one thing I think we should run past legal as well, just because I'm not positive, but I think there was something nebulous in that last or previous ballot measure that got voted in and I think it might be the $1 million one, to where the previous one a couple years prior, to where any building above $1 million had to, before we did anything, before we even did planning or and I think outreach even maybe. So that's where I would be careful that.
Right.
So I would, I think there is something in the back of my head that says that. So I'm for this, but let's just make sure that we don't get bit somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we're trying to have is that balance between fulfilling our obligation for having a very robust public outreach. And I don't think any of our intent is to go out and campaign or test to that. And that's why we're talking about this in an open forum, is so we have that guidance. And it could be just also that the council says, Jackie, I know you have a lot of time invested in this. Just keep doing what you're doing, and whatever the people vote is what the people vote, and the cards fall where they may. That may also be what you're telling me to do as well. But I don't have the resources to sit down and call people in the city to try to get factual information on this. I have talked to David on this, and we all agree that we cannot use city resources for any type of educational campaign. It would have to be strictly for statistical data in what we're trying to accomplish. There are avenues that we could internally look at. We tried looking at Metro, and they didn't have anything that was a free service. You can opt into like SurveyMonkey type industries. But the other reason why I bring this to you just in general is because there has been some sentiments from elected officials that the city needs to be investing in professional help for a communications plan. So that's holistically what I'd like to discuss here tonight.
I think it's so important that we get the right information out there, because there's so many rumors, so many questions, and I think we're going to need to put some money, throw some money at this. I know you don't want to spend any money on this.
Well,
I get
on
it,
this,
but
I agree.
But
No, it's what I'm laughing at. Ironic that the Portland Tribune today had an article on the front page about this.
About this?
About public entities spending money on news items, getting the word out. And it's sitting on my table at home. I was gonna.
There's a lot of misinformation out there.
And
we need to make an effort to engage as many people as we possibly can, so it doesn't go sideways.
But I don't think it's our role.
Why? And asking our citizens what they think, you don't think that's our role?
So, not for $20,000.
Well, I don't know if 20,000 is right, but we have to ask for their input. and Jackie is working 70 hours a week. We need to have somebody help us get this information.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, I noticed that in some of the documents that the county prepared, they actually, on their little timeline, at the very last page of what you have under item 3 in your packet, under public engagement, January 2018 Oak Lodge Library involved public in design and planning. May 2018 Gladstone Library involved public in design and planning. They're operating based on that little paragraph that's upper right corner in light blue, that because we have to adopt some kind of a ballot measure before we can involve the public in the design or planning of the library. And the other thing is you brought this up in terms of that commitment to a robust and transparent public engagement process, but what you're describing is primarily an engagement process with the citizens of Gladstone. And my understanding is that, this says the parties commit to it, the parties being both the county and the city of Gladstone. And so I see that as kind of a mutual engagement with the public, not simply what we do at our city level, but again, that was a stumbling block before. I think we have some Oak Lodge citizens present at the meeting, at least one, who might feel that, that robust process needs to be broader than our own city. Not that we don't have to do some...
Yeah, it is. And there's two parallel processes.
Okay.
So our next obligation, though, is the May ballot. We can't get into design and planning until we know that ballot passes.
Yeah.
Where Oak Grove and Gladstone, we together have things that we're doing, but we also have separate paths that we have to engage. And we're not saying that Oak Grove people can't be involved with any of our meetings or process. We're doing that. But clearly, I'm not sure where the misconception is that we're not engaging Oak Grove in that process.
No, it's only that when you began to talk about it, you were talking about just the communication needed in order to prepare the ballot measures that Gladstone citizens would be voting on.
We're the only ones voting on it.
What?
We're the only ones voting on it.
Yes.
No, it won't be Oak Grove.
But there won't be any process among Oak Grove residents before that on anything. Are we going to have to wait till then to do anything then? Is that the idea?
For our Gladstone Library.
Yeah,
that's correct. And so that's why we put together the public improvement plan that's in here, because that outlines the next steps for each entities, and we're going to have a specific town hall on January 11th, which is what I was going to end this topic with to talk about. But the city council, like I said, you could just say, no, we feel like the current process that we are doing suffices for public engagement, and not invest professional dollars in that. I'm fine with that. I just wanted to make sure that I'm including you. I'm at a point now where I need policy direction from the elected officials moving forward. And I also hear that there's a concern legally whether or not we can, and of course I'm going to make sure, David and I are going to make sure that before we spend any funds on that. But that's kind of where I need the conversation with the elected official, is where your comfort level is.
And I think I would be more than happy to say, give you a budget. What you want is a budget. You want approval to spend some money, and I think that's appropriate. And this here that you gave us is just a wild smorgasbord of what it could be.
What is it, a WAG?
Wag of the tail or something. And especially the poll, I think that is important to at least get an idea of what the feeling is out there right now of, is it going to pass? And I think that's where the poll will be important. I think of all this, the 19,000 is probably would be the most wisely spent to at least get an idea of, besides the people that are here constantly, just to see where the rest of the mood of the city is, as far as whether they're going to approve getting a new building built.
And I want to, I brought this up at one point in time too, and it wasn't specifically addressing the issue with the library. I think it's just overall getting some guidance on the message. I'm not going to use other words, and I think that's when I was having conversations with others too. This is what was concerning me, was that we operate in a vacuum and a void, I feel, with regard to communications to the citizens. And so I really appreciate the fact that you went out, Administrator Betts, and sought out an RFQ and got some ideas to what the actual cost could be, and now we could look at what the intent is for messaging or communicating with our citizens and come up with alternatives. And I agree with Councilor McMahon, put together a budget to be able to address this issue and others. And I think that's going to be important going forward for all of the work that we're doing, especially with the civic building projects and future developments, et cetera, so that there's a clear channel of communications with the citizens. So that's what I was hoping that we could accomplish with my recommendation of seeking out this information.
And I agree in the broader sense of certainly the need for that. And in fact, I was just looking through the City Handbook published by the League of Oregon Cities. They have a whole chapter on communications policies and programs and the importances of cities and the way they disseminate information, exactly what Councilor Tracy was saying. And so I think developing some good policies on that, and you'd probably have to do it with the guidance of professionals who would show you how to do it, is good. And then applying that specifically to the library situation or whatever other things come up. And we used this company before when we had a high-profile trial taking place. Isn't that right? Is that a different? That was a different group. Okay.
I wouldn't use them.
But we used a similar process. We went to a professional group when we knew that we had some communications issues that needed help beyond what we felt we could do. And I think to recognize our own limitations and the need to seek that professional help is probably a positive thing.
Correct. And I think that what I'm saying is I'm not sure it's going to be 19,000. What I'm saying is I think we need to at least do the polling component, and I have 4 other agencies that I could get costs to do that with. But yes, messaging, especially for the library, is tough because we have voted and voted and voted on this, and people don't believe us. And now they're not going to know what it means that we're going to get a library with no new taxes. So how we message this, I think, is going to be critical without actually campaigning. We're just trying to gather factual information. Other than that, I can tell you that the relationship with the county has been an enjoyable experience this far, and I know that we are making some very good progress, and that the county is willing to continue to help us with some of these items. But I think that we're at a point now that the city needs to invest a little bit to get us to that next May ballot issue.
And I appreciate the 2-pagers and the 1-pagers that were put forward by the county that you included in the packets. I thought that was important for us to have those, and the ones that were sent to us via email we downloaded, and I'm carrying them with me because they are the fact sheets. But then again, how much can the county really commit to our cause in regard to messaging? And so I think that's your point, is it not?
That is correct. Okay. And we have a great deal of support from Oak Lodge. When I attended their library, they want to see this measure passed. It's in both of our best interests to do that. I just think that, like I said, being that it's not something that's budgeted, I wanted to bring it to your attention and see what the guidance was from you. So.
And we got to walk our talk, and we have it. And I think the polling is crucial. I think it's very important to get input.
Well, we are where we are because we didn't know what we were doing.
That's exactly right.
And we obviously didn't have good guidance. So I think we need to do this differently, professionally.
One other suggestion, and this is pretty picky, but I'll just bring it up anyway. We need to either remove the apostrophe from the word communications or remove the apostrophe S and just call it a communication plan. I think we mean communications plural, and so there's no apostrophe.
Communication plan.
Or communications without an apostrophe.
All right. All right,
Do we have
so-
any other former English teachers out there that would agree?
No, but we're happy we have that one.
All right, so,
Listen here.
so what would you folks like to do?
Is there any public comments on this?
Well, it depends.
It's not overcritical. The budget, when I read through it, was more like $80,000, seems like a lot.
Well, but this is just rough. This,
Right, but,
Yeah.
you know, one of the things I've learned recently, and it's been pointed out by some of the council, is that on off-year elections or special elections, a very low turnout of people actually vote. I think a lot of this could be done by citizens. I talked to Mayor Stempelhiller briefly, as well as one of the county commissioners, on helping to push this thing through, something I'm behind. And I think that we can get some citizens together, and maybe for the price of a pot of coffee or something, the use of a room, come up with some strategies, and target the people who generally vote in these special elections. It's all public record who cast votes, and generally we have less than 2,000 people that vote. So really, I think what we need to do is just target those people. I think residents can do that at little to no cost, or no cost, I should say.
you know, this is above and beyond the boots on the street. I mean, we're going to need that too.
Yeah.
But I
this
want
is-
to be clear, I'm not asking for $80,000. I asked for, there's a number of items in here.
It's a
and-
cafeteria menu
Exactly.
RFQ. It's not a budget. I didn't
Yeah.
see it specific to our projects. I think it was experiential to those projects. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you weren't presenting a budget to the council?
No.
Thank you.
I'm
But
letting
do
you know
wanna-
that
I want you
unless
to
I
sign
hear...
this, that you're going to do boots on the street.
I'll say it on record.
So here's my
It's on
concern
record.
with that. And thank you, Citizen Osborne. But my concern is that, again, we're not able to really have any control over the message if citizens are just going out and spreading their message. I think the whole point here is to communicate from the city to the citizens. And I think it could be coordinated in such a fashion that it works, but the folks that run these firms, this is what they do. This is their wheelhouse. And it may seem very simple to others, and, oh, anybody can do it, but my experience is that that's not necessarily true. So though I admire the effort and want, Citizen Osborne, you still need to, I think we need to have a professional involved in this. Somebody who does this for a living, somebody who does it for city after city after city. So that's my concern, is that it gets out there, and then all of a sudden somebody changes the tone or, the verbiage, and it becomes a game of telephone. I go on Nextdoor Gladstone, and we have werewolves running through the streets. We simply do not. So I want to make sure that I'm emphatic about this because I've seen this slide off the road, so to speak, into the ditch. These are folks who really know how to get to people, how to analyze the results, how to get participation, how to up those numbers, and get us the results that we may need while communicating with our citizens in a unified fashion from the city of Gladstone. And so it's different than a citizen going out there and communicating for the city. Does that make sense, Bill?
Yeah, although I see 7 potential volunteers that can keep the message.
Oh, without a doubt, but
Yep.
we all have to make sure we're coordinating everything and that there's continuity throughout the whole
The
process.
right information.
And it's the right information.
Yeah,
And we would have no problem, working
Okay.
with the
perfect,
council and just taking your message to the people.
perfect.
Thanks.
Okay, so do we want to have a consensus of going ahead and moving forward with?
I only wanted to make one comment, and I believe Councilor Tracy said it, almost. The professional poll taking is critical in that it needs to be a random poll,
Third party.
and it needs to be at the right group accordingly, and I'd just like to make sure that is considered, so.
So with it not being a budget item per se, can we just give you a head nod of, like this option is the city could choose to hire professional services, which is what I would like to do.
Yes.
Okay, Counselor Milch, yes?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Counselor Neese?
Yes.
Counselor Tracy?
Yes.
Counselor Mercero?
Yes.
Yes.
No. But.
Neil says no.
But.
Mayor Stemple says yes. All right.
Amendment to that would be to also work, I guess, with the citizens that are interested in actually.
A political action committee kind
Yeah.
of.
Hey, absolutely. We're going to need all the
later.
stakeholders
Yeah, that's
in
later.
that. And I think we are getting the printed materials that Mr. Osborne's talking about. These fact sheets that's the information that we're just now starting to get out. But I think that what you're seeing is that you're starting to see the fruits of our labor come undone. And like I said, it's been a great partnership with the county. I'm impressed with how far we've gotten. So it's
Great.
a lot of work, but it's going to be worth it.
And thanks for bringing this information to us, so we actually had some numbers to go along with the
And for
concept.
future projects, now we kind of have an idea
Right.
what that may cost us. All right, the next is the update on our civic building projects.
And again, I just wanted to let you know that we have a staff team together that we solicited informal quotes for 3 project managers. I have one individual that I'm interviewing in the morning, and then we will take a look at those to just help us with the RFP phase of the project. And we're still looking at getting that out in the beginning of January. But once we've selected a project manager, it's within my spending authority, but I wanted to let you know that that is still moving forward. So that's all good news on the
Great.
City Hall and Police Department. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Do we have anything else?
Just that you have a meeting tomorrow night at the
Tomorrow night is with the school
Senior
board. We've got a
Center.
great agenda, so that's exciting.
And I do believe tomorrow is the swearing in for a new fire captain, is that correct?
1:30. Yeah.
1:30?
Oh, is that tomorrow?
Okay, perfect, thank
Captain
you.
At the fire
Newton.
station.
Captain Newton, who's being demoted.
Yes, but he's getting a pay raise.
I think he's okay with it. Yes.
When you're talking about a poll, I just want to caution you on something. When Oak Lodge was looking for the bond measure, the GEO bond measure, we went out for doing the sewer plant.
Mhm.
The sanitary district hired a firm to do a statistically correct poll, and the firm came back and told the sanitary district that the bond measure was going to fail. It could not get more than 37% of the yes votes out there, and they called me, and I said, I don't believe that. We're not changing anything that we're doing, and we went ahead with what we were doing as a citizen group, getting the word out, and the bond measure passed by 85% yes vote. Now, it was in an off-time vote, like this one is being in May, an off-time vote, so not everybody's got to go out and even put their ballot in.
Mhm.
The other one
Well,
that...
before, that was mentioned earlier. No, it's going to be the primary
On a
election.
midterm election year.
Yeah.
But it's not a presidential, but the
Exactly.
governor,
But it's in May.
right,
Your
Yeah.
vote's in May.
right.
Okay, the other one that happened, was the North Clackamas Parks and Rec District from the county, decided to up their thing and do whatever they were gonna do. And they hired a firm to give them a statistically correct, input. And the firm came back and said, oh yeah, it's gonna pass with flying colors, and it failed.
Yeah, but I
So
think there's just
you're
as many
statistically
that
correct.
worked.
I mean, I wouldn't hang my hat on it.
That's why we need the boots on the ground.
Yes, you
To help
definitely
that.
need the boots on the ground, and
Yeah.
I can also add, I know the county's already hired somebody, a firm, it's called JLA, for the library. stuff, 'cause I've already met with them myself. And, what we're looking at in the Oak Lodge area is identifying the stakeholders that we've got. And you've got the library board, you've got the library foundation here, so you've got boots on the ground, plus the 7 of you, taking them out, 'cause they can't really go out and do anything, but you can say whatever you want, as elected officials. So that gives you 7 plus the 7 on the library board, and the 7 or however many's on the foundation, that you need to get that group together.
Absolutely.
And sit down and figure out what you're gonna do.
Yeah, we will definitely be doing that.
That's my
Absolutely.
suggestion to all of you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Okay,
Selma.
do we have anything else other than, Friday night, 7 o'clock, holiday tree lighting?
And tomorrow.
And then tomorrow night? And tomorrow night, school board?
Mm-hmm.
All right. It is 8:20 p.m. We are done.